There was a time when it was unthinkable to have a child out of wedlock. And people actually used to have the desire to not only get married, but to have children in the context of marriage, where they would not allow themselves to have a child unless they had a solid foundation in the home. So the fact that we live in an age where that almost is the anomaly, to see a two-parent household, to go into some of these different neighborhoods or communities or whatever it is, and to see parents with their children. The fact that there are places where that is the anomaly, that is the outlier, is heartbreaking to me. Now, I wanted to talk about, out of wedlock. That was the original title for this. But then I realized, I needed to be deeper than that. I needed to be more thoughtful than just that subject, because I know it is a triggering subject and I'm not afraid to trigger anybody emotionally. I believe that the truth is triggering enough by itself, right? The truth is offensive in a world that is in love with the lie. But the reason why I said, let me get into this conversation of the baby mama and baby daddy dynamic is because I can give a fuller picture of exactly what the hell is going wrong here. Now, it's no surprise that there's a certain demographic who has accepted the baby mama and baby daddy dynamic. The statistics speak for themselves. As a matter of fact, this specific group of individuals has actually started to glorify baby mamas and baby dads. The reason why I'm not saying black men, black women is because there is a large percentage within that group of individuals that do not subscribe to that mentality. Unfortunately, it has grown to be a smaller and smaller group, right? If we're to look back in the 1930s, black communities in America were, 88% married, having children in wedlock. Now, it's close to 75% out of wedlock. So there's still a percentage that have a genuine value for family, but there is a group within the group. And that demographic right there has accepted simply being a baby mama or a baby daddy. And I could blame hip hop, and that's easy, but I believe that hip hop is just showing us what the hell has been accepted already. It's like the art is emulating real life, and then it is perpetuating itself. Like, I don't believe it just stops with the rappers, and I don't hold them responsible. I believe that they have an opportunity to change that dynamic, to shift that that kind of psychology, but many don't take that. They just go with whatever is easier, which is kind of just going along with the status quo, and they don't challenge the status quo. So instead of making music about, their wives and having a family and, living a structured life as opposed to scattering seed everywhere, we get bees ain't ish but and tricks. That's what we get. So we're going to put that to the side and get back to the point at hand. There was a shift that happened culturally, and it wasn't slavery and it wasn't Jim Crow, right? As much damage as the Democratic did in fighting to preserve slavery, as well as introducing the Jim Crow segregation laws, the genuine systemically racist laws, that even could not break apart or separate the black family. That didn't create the baby mama and baby daddy dynamic. Even in the context of slavery and Jim Crow, black mothers and black fathers stayed within the household as best as they could. And when they were separated, that was a heartbreaking experience. To think that a father would run off on the family, or that a mother would escape the family, she would leave her children, that was unthinkable. That was taboo. That was on the outskirts. It wasn't that it wasn't happening, but it was taboo. In the same way, welfare was taboo. It wasn't normalized. It wasn't something to do. It wasn't, something that was justified by anybody in these communities. You were seen as problematic if you could not take care of your own household. And yet we find ourselves, after Jim Crow, having the very opposite effect. So some people like to blame Reagan, right? It's got to be the white man's fault. Surely it's got to be the white man who did this. And I'll say it was a white man or a series of white men, but it wasn't Reagan. And as much as folk don't like to hear this, especially those who are still trapped on that Democratic plantation, it was not the Republican Party. Though they have had their fair share of, bigotry and things of that nature, it didn't come from that camp. Ronald Reagan's war on drugs, unfortunately, had a disproportionate effect on a specific group of people because those individuals were already susceptible. This group of individuals was already primed because they were already fathers out the house, and that had already been incentivized and normalized. And now in modern day, it has been glamorized. You have artists who literally have, music like the Sexy Reds of the world, right? Rich Baby Daddy. You have Summer Walker, Sexy Red in the music video, pregnant with the ratchet look on or whatever it is, celebrating their lack of a baby daddy or lack of a father in the household. Having a damn baby daddy who's in God knows where, getting pregnant for the sake of the bag, like this type of mentality. And I didn't want to make this just, baby mamas, because that's too easy. And I wasn't just going to make it baby dads because I'm an equal opportunist asshole. Everybody can get it with me. It's not a anti-male, anti-female. It's both of us who become problem, and it's both of us who become solution in this situation. But back to the history. In 1964, one of the most important documents, pieces of legislation signed into law in the Civil Rights Act. And the only reason it was signed into law is because the Democratic Party, who was in the presidency at the time, they were forced to sign that into law due to a majority House and Senate that were Republican, or majority Republican House, majority Republican Senate, who pushed that bill through. This bill was filibustered, which means that it was stalled for 75 days by the Democratic Party, which shouldn't surprise anybody if you know the genuine historic context of the two-party system, right? One party fought to keep slavery while the other fought to eradicate slavery. I'm not saying that, there weren't people on both sides who felt it was beneficial and they were trying to cling on to it, but the reality is that one was pushing for this policy, the other pushed for another policy. One wanted the 13th Amendment moved into law, the other did not. That's reality. And so when it comes to the Civil Rights Act, it was filibustered by the Democratic Party. Now, thank God it was passed through into law, and we supposedly got into a more fair system. And it is, to be fair, it became a much more fair system for everybody included. Except for the fact that the Democratic Party changed their strategy. They shifted the way in which they were going to keep their slaves on the plantation by creating these so-called welfare reforms that were targeted towards urban areas, more specifically black people, right? The word urban is usually connotated with blackness. So they took these laws and used them as a way to gain the vote, i.e. gain the power over this specific demographic of people. So imagine you're now coming into this system. You are now being integrated in, and the first thing you get is handout, handout, handout. You may very well think that these people care about you, right? LBJ was all of a sudden giving speeches about, how detrimental slavery was, etc., right? Up there just pandering, as a Kamala would stand up there and have Meg Thee Stallion twerking in front of you, right? It was just a lot more subtle and nuanced with the likes of a LBJ. But it was still the very same tactic. We're going to pander to you, and we're going to make you reliant and dependent upon us. There is nothing that is more disenfranchising or disempowering than somebody having control over you, whatever that control may look like. You may think that you are getting a leg up or a hand up because you're getting a handout, but in the long term, it is making you less and less capable. It makes you feel as if you're reliant upon that system or that individual to do anything. And so there were incentive programs that were pushed out through welfare, which said that, if that man is in your house, you get less benefits. If that man is out the house, you get more benefits. That's simple. Now, if it was just that, it wouldn't have made the same mark that it made because of the coupling of the feminist movement. Remember, the 60s were filled with these damn activists, right? Everybody was a hippie, a feminist, a this and that. Right? We got Nam going, we got the damn Vietnam War hits and all. It was perfect grounds It was perfect fertile ground for a quote unquote revolution. And so you had feminism telling women, you don't need no man, you can do it all by yourself. That message is now leaking into a group of individuals who once had the highest admiration of family. As a matter of fact, the Black American population is statistically the most conservative by beliefs, yet they are the most liberal by their votes, which is a contradiction that many wouldn't even understand until you started to look at the conditioning, the brainwashing that took place. The baby mama and the baby daddy that we see today was socially engineered by the Democratic Party. Now, I've had somebody say, why don't you speak bad about the Republican Party? I say, I can point to certain individuals in the Republican Party that were problematic, but the difference is the Democratic Party's entire foundation, its entire basis is problematic. It's probably going to have to go through a revolutionary shift in the next 20 years if they're even going to get back in a position of power. Because these guys have, as they say, screwed the pooch, right? These guys have royally effed up. But again, if you based on deceit, you're based on pandering, and before you were based on control, manipulation, overt manipulation and control. Now it's covert manipulation and control. You're never going to last the test of time. The Republican Party is not a perfect party, but it has always been the party of freedom. It has always been the party of, of quote unquote marginalized people, enslaved peoples. That's the God honest truth. That's why before the 1960s, almost all Black people voted as Republicans. And it was only after that shift where there was this mirage that was created, right? The Oz behind the damn curtain, where all of a sudden there was a switcheroo within the approach. People like to talk about the party shift, and you can't find it historically in an accurate enough way. You can allude to say, okay, maybe this bill and this individual, but there was no actual party shift. What happened was the strategy. And it was a brilliant strategy if you're wanting to manipulate people for the sake of power. If you wanted to help them, it's the most diabolical evil because you made them reliant upon you. But if you want votes, it's a brilliant strategy. If you want to control over, as a matter of fact, LBJ said himself, we're going to have these, hard R's voting for us for the next 60 years. As he signed the legislation, he knew what this meant for them if they used it strategically. And unfortunately, his plan came to manifest. And so that's when we started having the deterioration. I did a video not too long ago, and it was a young lady basically she was doing a review on an old video that I'd never seen before. It was, I believe, early 80s, late 70s. And these young Black women, I'm talking about young as 18, 19, 22, 23. And they're asking them, so do you want to get married one day, etc. And every single one of them but one say, no, I don't believe that my life should be based around a marriage and and I don't really need a man. And they were saying it in a very sophisticated way. It wasn't in the ratchet way that the hip hop culture is now presented, but in this caricature kind of way. They were articulating themselves very well, but it was unfortunate. And it broke my heart to see it because I said, it was like that then. I mean, no wonder why it is what it is now. These women in the late 70s were already talking about, well, we really don't need a man, and I'm going to get my education and I'm going to focus on this and that. That sort of delusion. And I'm not saying that those things don't matter. I'm simply saying that this is the erosion. This is the I can do bad all by myself mentality. And so you have the man kicked out, but then you also have the man disincentivized to be a man and take the responsibility. If you don't need him, then he's going to be out the picture. When he has no value, then he is essentially going to be out of the way. There's this myth that it's just all these Black men just leave their children and that's all that happens. And I'll be lying to say that that isn't what happens in some cases, maybe even many of the cases, but it's not all cases. There are men who are fighting for their children, whatever it is, or may even be better off to take care of the children that unfortunately, due to the way that the system has been set up, that may be a harder fight. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it just becomes a harder fight, at least in the United States. There are other places in the world, right? Shout out to Belgium, where it's a more fair system. It's like you're the more sane parent. You deserve more time. You're doing this. You're more responsible. You got this. You got that. It's not just this male, female. Maybe somebody has different experiences or whatever it is. But as far as what I've looked into, because that's where my girl is from, it's not like that everywhere. But here, where it is seen in the cultural norms. Me being a young Black man, having two parents in a household. Out of a group of six of us when I was growing up, there was only two of us who had our dads around, and one of them was in a divorced couple. So I was the only one who had a mom and a dad who were still married. That sounds crazy. That should sound crazy. That should sound out of pocket. And I thought I started to normalize this within myself to say, damn, maybe this is just how it is. And then you start to travel a little bit and you're like, wait a minute. You're walking through Antwerp, whatever, you seen people coupled up, hand hold, like, you're like, what is going on out here? What, people are married, like married. You go out in Ireland, people are coupled up. You got young couples, old couples, this, that. But then you have to go to the context. And I don't there is a causation, but the fact that it is perpetuated. So causation and perpetuation are two different things. The perpetuation of that culture is the responsibility of the ones who are now projecting or expressing that culture. Meaning, the ones who are still doing the baby mama, baby daddy thing are the ones who are continuing that same vicious cycle. If you are normalizing baby mama, baby daddy, you are a part of the problem now. You can't blame the system anymore because the system has become an inherent system. It's a system within your household. The system is a belief system, and only you can change a belief system. Your children are going to look at you as the model. Your children's children are going to look at your children as the model. And when you are continuously pushing the very same narrative, when you are continuously pushing the very same dysfunctional relationship dynamics, it's going to manifest in the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And that's when it becomes this generational curse. And it takes an individual brave enough to step away from that mold. And I've seen so many of these individuals who engage, with my content, etc. These are individuals who made a decision to be different, to live different, to not go with the status quo. Oh, yeah, you're going to get more validation being a player. You're going to get more validation being a 304, being an OF model, IG model, AKA just showing your assets all over the internet. You might get more, attention, but you're not going to get more love. You might get more attention, but you're not going to get more stability. You might get attention, but you're not going to get a relationship that you actually desire. The one where somebody loves you, you love them, that you build a life together. You're not going to get those aspects from living in the same way that has been perpetuated since the breaking of that family unit. Baby mamas and baby daddies should not be normalized. They should not be worshiped and praised. And if people have been in situations, then again, I commend you. I commend you. But we're not going to make that the standard and the norm. That's the difference. And I hear the argument, and I know where it's coming from, where people are trying to, ish on single mothers or whatever it may be, right? That's not the right solution. But praising and saying this is what you should aspire is a lie as well, because it's not giving an accurate depiction of just how unnatural and how difficult it is to try to be a mother and a father at the same damn time. It was never meant to be that way. And I know sometimes a parent will die. I know sometimes you have, situations that happen, divorces that happen, etc. I understand that. But at least let's try. At least let's push for a new norm. At least let's go back to a way where we can, let's make the best of our situations. Let's make sure that we are cultivating a generation that is ready to be married. Unfortunately, you have mothers, you have fathers who never became marriage material, never became a husband or a wife, because you become that before you ever get a ring. Don't get that twisted. A ring don't make you a husband, ring don't make you a wife in the characteristics. It might on paper, but not the characteristics, right? What is it to be a husband? What is it to be a wife? What is it to be in this sort of dynamic? These are things that have to be ingrained. They have to be inscribed into your own heart and your own mind. You have to renew your mind if you're not already in that place. You think you're just going to step in a relationship, it's just going to be all good. You don't even know how to vet for somebody. You're looking for all these superficial markers as opposed to looking at who the person actually is. That's not going to work. But it all starts with ourselves. Personal accountability. Personal accountability. Meaning, what am I doing and what needs to change? How am I showing up? And how's this, either adding or taking away from my good, from my benefit? Is it serving me, or is this rendering me incapable of doing, the things that I desire to do in this life? Am I going for relationships for the right or the wrong reasons? If you are looking to have a baby mama or a baby daddy and you think that's cute, you're automatically already in the positioning of you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're not looking to bring a child up in a natural context, in a together household, and I heard somebody trying to make an argument for, two-parent households have not been the norm and and we try to point to, before the 1950s that wasn't the norm and this wasn't the this and this wasn't that. And I say, wait a minute. This is how I'm a simple man. I really am. I drink my tea and I speak the facts. Okay? Simple man. It takes a mommy and a dad. One mommy, one daddy makes one baby, two babies, five babies, 10, whatever, right? But it takes man, woman come together. Baby is produced. If we were born to be naturally polygamous or whatever it was, right? All these things that are trying to be justified in a host of different ways. Wouldn't it seem natural that, you can maybe get three different people's babies up in there, right? One daddy, two daddy, three daddies. Or maybe that it takes 3 or 4 or 5 in order to create one baby. No, it's 1 and 1. And then these two pair bond, and then they care for the youth. And they say that humans, out of almost all mammals, are the one who needs the most care for the longest amount of time, right? You have some animals where maybe they need a few months or a few days and, they're kind of independent. We need 18 years. And if you look at it today, some need 35 years, right, to finally become independent. So that means that there has to be some sort of environment that is equally balanced, that is rearing up that child. That's the natural course of things. That's why there is preservation of relationship. If we were just meant to be running the streets and running buck wild or whatever it is, we wouldn't have certain emotions that make us bond, even jealousy, envy, etc., which I'm not saying are healthy emotions, but they're at least representations to say that there's an aspect of us when we're honest with ourselves that wants to pair bond. We want to bond, not to 100, but to this one. But again, many have just given up on that and just go along with the, what's been presented, which is nothing more than a dysfunctional way of living that makes us easier to control. That's really what it's always been about. Again, it's about power and manipulation. It's about control. If I can control your emotions, I control you. I have you under my thumb. And how do I control you? By getting you emotional, getting you afraid, getting you in that reptilian part of your brain, in that fight or flight state. And when you are living in this baby mama, baby daddy dynamic, you are literally in survival. If you see most single mothers running around, trying to do all this and stress, survival. Single father, trying to be mom, trying to be survival. Discord in the relationships, maybe co-parents, what? Discord, dysfunction in the survival, as opposed to cultivating healthy, stable relationship dynamics and normalizing those. So that's my message. Simple as that. Let's make mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, normal again.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a hardening heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 3, 6, 5, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.